Taiwan is ending a 10-year-long ban on food imports from Fukushima, Japan, the site of a nuclear meltdown in 2011.
Stash speaks with nuclear energy professor Li Min to better understand the science behind the decision.
Then, Emma will tell you about Taiwan's Lantern Festival, which is taking place all February in Kaohsiung City.
And in #Taiwan, Leslie Liao tells you about Taiwan at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. This is Taiwan Insider.
Welcome to today's show. This week, Taiwan lifted a decade-long ban on food imports from Japan's Fukushima area. Taiwan banned the foods in 2011 for food safety concerns after an earthquake and tsunami triggered a meltdown at a nearby nuclear plant. Taiwan officials say their decision to lift the ban is based on science and is in line with international standards.
Taiwan and Japan have a friendly relationship when it comes to admiring each other's tourist attractions and delicious cuisine. However, the issue of importing food from Japanese regions affected by the Fukushima nuclear disaster has caused friction between the two countries over the past decade. Taiwan's decision to lift the ban on Fukushima imports is the result of years of research conducted by experts around the world. Inspections led by the National Taiwan University College of Medicine have concluded that any traces of nuclear radiation are negligible and there's no cause for alarm. According to international standards, a person's annual exposure to radiation should not exceed 1 millisievert. NTU research concluded that people would be exposed to less than 3/1000ths of that from these Japanese food imports. NTU professor Jiang Zhigang says that the chances of contracting cancer from this amount of radiation exposure is 1 in 10 million. On the other hand, Taipei Changgeng Hospital's Clinical Poison Center Director Yan Zonghai says that he's still concerned about radioactive residue from these food imports. He said that the half-life of various radioactive substances can be up to 30 years, and only 11 years have passed since the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Some say that any products that contain food from these radiation-affected areas should be clearly labeled for consumers. Only time will tell whether Taiwan shoppers will be willing to purchase these items or leave them untouched on the shelves.
Now, Taiwan's cabinet says that the ban lift is conditional. Food imports from the region will be subject to strict inspection, and items like mushrooms, wild bird meat, and other vegetables will remain prohibited. Staś Butler spoke with nuclear science expert Professor Li Min to get a clearer picture of the science behind the decision.
You need to do some measurement to make sure how much radionuclide is left in the food. It must be below so-called maximum minimal concentration set up in the regulation before the food can be shipped to the market. So you can do that very easily. It's kind of a standard procedure in making those measurements.
How many of these products do you think are below that limit? I mean, how are we expecting to see lots of these products, not meeting this limit?
I don't have a number exactly to quote, but in my impression is there's not a lot of fish with radionuclide contamination above the regulatory limit, but you still need to check it before you put the fish on the market.
And with these kinds of, checking it's below this concentration, what kind of testing are these products going?
Well, it's not a testing. It's you just use the radiation detector. Makes a measurement. It's pretty easy. As long as you have a proper instrument, you can measure it directly.
According to the government itself, 55 countries had controls on food imports from Japan following the Fukushima disaster. But till this week, only Taiwan and China still had a complete ban on food products from the region. In your view, is Taiwan lagging behind other countries on this issue?
Yes. In the last December, we have a popular referendum on the commercial operation of the fourth nuclear power plant. So I'm kind of against government policy. Now government another, make an announcement going to import the food from the Fukushima area. Do I against it? No, I don't think so, because I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer. I have to make sure my point of view is scientific based, okay? Based on the scientific evidence, the risk of importing the food from Fukushima is extremely low. We don't need to worry about it.
Now, the government says lifting the ban will boost Taiwan's chances of joining a regional free trade pact, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP for short. Now, right now, the CPTPP has 11 signatories, shown here in light and dark green. They include Japan, Canada, Australia, and Mexico, among others. Now, Taiwan applied to join in September, just a week after China put in its own application. Crucially for Taiwan, Japan has the largest economy of the current members, and Japan is also the chair of the CPTPP's commission. Taiwanese authorities hope lifting the Fukushima import ban will remove any lingering bad feelings from Japan towards Taiwan, making it easier to join the trade agreement. But Taiwan still needs all 11 signatories to support its application before it can join, and the whole process can take years. So don't expect a neat resolution to this story anytime soon. Up next, Leslie Liao has all the latest on Taiwan at the Winter Olympics in #Taiwan.
It might seem like we just got out of one Olympic Games, but guess what? It's time for another. The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics kicked off on February 4th and it's scheduled to go until February 20th. Given the current political situation, you might think that Taiwan isn't participating in the Winter Olympics in China, or you might think that Taiwan's not participating because it's a subtropical country where snow is treated like a tourist attraction. But the reality is, yes, Taiwan is participating in Beijing 2022. And if you're wondering, how? Well, just remember that the Caribbean country Jamaica also has a bobsledding team. Taiwan sent 4 athletes to compete in 3 sports, 2 in alpine skiing, 1 in luge, and 1 in speed skating. The speed skater, 33-year-old Huang Yuting, got into some trouble on social media last Thursday on the eve of the Winter Olympics. She uploaded training footage of herself wearing the uniform of the Chinese team. If you're a longtime watcher of this show, I don't have to tell you why that's a problem. China claims Taiwan as part of its territory, and it threatens Taiwan with military force regularly. So a Team Taiwan member wearing a Chinese uniform kind of sends the wrong message. In response to criticisms, Huang said that politics and sports should be kept separate. She said there are no borders in athletics. However, Huang is one of Team Taiwan's flag bearers at Beijing 2022. So some people, like Taiwanese legislator Xu Zijie, think Huang should have been a little more sensitive when representing the country. Some people were so upset with Huang that they hurled eggs at her picture, which I really don't think is necessary. I mean, there's an egg shortage in Taiwan right now. Come on, man. Now, let's fast forward to the opening ceremony. Last year at the Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics, we talked about how Japanese national broadcaster NHK called Team Taiwan, Taiwan, and not Chinese-Taipei, the team's official designation at the Olympic Games. Now, if you don't get why that's a big deal, I'm gonna leave a link in the description box below to the episode of #Taiwan that explains why that was a big deal. NHK did the same thing during the Beijing opening ceremony, so it's pretty neat that they're staying consistent. During the opening ceremony, a large group of children holding dove-shaped lanterns gathered on stage. One of the children went astray and another had to lead them back into the group. Some users on Chinese social media believed that unruly child and their subsequent return to be a metaphor for Taiwan. Like Taiwan is the unruly kid who went astray and it will inevitably be returned to China's fold, which, hey man, whatever you say. I don't know what to make of that display because I'm still impressed with the fact that Taiwan, with its tropical heat and climate and its humidity, somehow managed to send athletes to the Winter Olympics.
Taiwan is coming out of a 9-day Lunar New Year break. But celebrations aren't over just yet. The Taiwan Tourism Bureau is holding its 2022 Lantern Festival in Kaohsiung, and it's taking place the entire month.
The 15th day of the first month on the lunar calendar marks the Lantern Festival, but this year Taiwan's Tourism Bureau will celebrate the holiday for an entire month. The 2022 Taiwan Lantern Festival is taking place in Kaohsiung City between February 1st and February 28th. There are magnificent light shows and impressive sculptures, but one of this year's main draws is a giant transparent inflatable person lying on their back in the middle of a grass field. This installation, titled Aerial Being, is on display starting at 3 p.m. every day of the Lantern Festival, and people lie down next to it just to take a load off. The artwork is the brainchild of Japanese artist Yasuhiro Suzuki. It weighs a staggering 200 kilograms and measures 25 meters in length. The deputy head of Kaohsiung Tourism Bureau says it takes an hour to inflate the sculpture each day. As Taiwan goes back to work after the 9-day Lunar New Year break, this giant supine person might be a good reminder to take a break even in the busiest of times.
This is the first time in 20 years that Kaohsiung is hosting the Lantern Festival. Besides the inflatable Aerial Being installation, crowds were also won over by the festival's centerpiece, a giant phoenix soaring above a mountaintop and clouds next to a map of Taiwan. In a nod to the new zodiac for the Lunar New Year, the Tourism Bureau is also handing out little tiger lanterns to children at the festival. This year's festival is certainly a beautiful fusion of old traditions and modern technology. And before I go and join my co-hosts, let's take a look at the other stories that are on our radar this week.
A delegation from the de facto independent African state of Somaliland arrived in Taiwan on Tuesday at the invitation of Taiwan's foreign ministry. The group is led by Somaliland's foreign minister Isa Kaid and includes a number of other high-ranking officials. While in Taiwan, Kaid met with President Tsai Ing-wen and Foreign Minister Joseph Wu, among others. During the visit, the two sides discussed Taiwanese investments in and trade with Somaliland. The delegation will remain in Taiwan until Saturday. Travelers arriving in Taiwan currently face a 14-day quarantine followed by a week of health self-management. However, there are reports that Taiwanese health authorities are considering shortening the quarantine period to 10 days. Authorities will also relax business visa requirements. Health Minister Chen Shizong has hinted that those changes might happen as soon as the end of February, but he hasn't given any official confirmation. The government says any adjustments will be based on scientific evidence and availability of resources. Taiwan has been experiencing a severe shortage of eggs since January. Some industry experts are calling it the most severe egg shortage in decades. They say a number of factors have contributed to the situation: increasing costs of feed and logistics, cold weather, recent outbreaks of avian flu, and government freeze on retail prices. On Monday, in response to the shortage, the government announced new subsidies to egg production, an increase in egg imports from Japan, Australia, and the US, and lower tariffs on imported chicken feed.
And we're back in the studio, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Emma and Stash. And Stash would like me to reassure you that there has been no coup, and Natalie's just taking a day off. But for our final question of the week today, I'm going to be asking my co-hosts how they spent their 9-day Lunar New Year break. Emma told you we just came out of a very nice long break, and we all went somewhere nice and enjoyed it. So Stash, show me a picture of your break that sums it up, or the best part of your break, whatever it was.
All right, well, take a look at this. This is the dining table at my friend's house on Lunar New Year's Eve. So much food on offer. It was, kind of quite overwhelming.
There's
really.
like a bunch of... You went to Elon, right?
Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
a plate of duck there, and duck is like their specialty out there.
Yeah, there was lots of duck on offer, lots of veg, lots of... Honestly, every meat, everything you could think of.
What was your favorite thing you had?
That's a good question. There was, I think it was actually the duck. There was the duck. The duck stuff was really, really nice in the kind of, pancake.
All right, Emma, show us your picture from over the Lunar New Year break.
Okay, so here it is. I went to Xiaoliocho with a bunch of friends over break, which was great. The weather was awesome, as you can see, nice clear skies. And one of my favorite things that we did was we went kayaking in these really cool kayaks I'd never been in before. They were completely transparent, so you could look down, see the water, see the beautiful fish and the coral.
Could you see stuff?
You had to kind of press your face down, which was only if you were really flexible was possible. And we couldn't see any sea turtles while we were doing that because they tend to stay away from the boats, but we saw some from a distance, which was really cool.
Was it kind of scary? Because sometimes I get a bit freaked out in water when I realize how deep it is. Did you have any kind of was there anything kind of weird about doing that?
I was fine, but I had a friend who ate a manto right before, and he said it didn't really sit that well in his stomach.
Mantos are pretty innocuous, they're pretty harmless.
Yeah, exactly.
Food,
it's pretty much benign, as benign a food as you can eat. But
anyway, this is my picture from the Lunar New Year break, and for the last 2 days of the break, I went camping up in the mountains It's not
beautiful.
exactly camping; it's like glamping.
Glamping.
They had nice.
That's quite a
facilities
Taiwanese
up
thing, though.
there.
I feel
Yeah.
like you're like, oh, I went camping. It's like, oh, the air conditioning wasn't good. Though.
Yeah,
Like, what?
there was an air conditioner in the tent. That's like
Oh my
boggled
God.
my mind.
yeah.
But it was a beautiful way to spend the last few days of the Lunar New Year break. The air up there is so nice and
I
crisp.
bet. Compared to Taichung, huh?
Yeah, and a little cold up there, but it was really, really nice, really great experience. Pretty good.
Did you get to see the sunrise or the sunset while you were
No, cloudy. You wanted to see the
sure.
sunset, and then like it was all clouds. I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, we're not seeing anything.
Oh, fair enough.
Anyway, that's about all the time we have for this week's show. For Taiwan Insider, I'm Leslie Liao.
I'm Staś Butler.
And I'm Emma Benack.
You can follow us on social media.
Yeah, we're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the major media platforms.
And when you check us out on there, don't be afraid to send us a message. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. Anyway, guys, until next week, we'll see you around.